After gorging on Jordan Peterson videos, I told my friend Kathy, "I'll bet he has a Gauquelin Mars." She laughed and said, "He does seem to frame everything in terms of a battle." But we didn't know. We didn't have his chart until yesterday. Now, thanks to astrotheme.com, we do. Jordan Peterson, June 12, 1962, 2:49 a.m., Edmonton, Canada. And if you look at the chart, there it is, in the 12th house, right over the ascendant, Gauquelin Mars. And if you watch Jordan Peterson carefully, he's got all the Mars traits: a fiery temperament, an argumentative nature, strong boundaries, an iron will, a proud professionalism, a crusading spirit, passions that border on obsession, and a desire to impose order upon chaos. Greetings. I am Patrick Jerome, and this is lesson number 4 in my series on fact-based astrology. Today's topic is Gauquelin Mars, which is the first planet that Gauquelin found data for. It's the one that gave him a certain degree of fame, and it's the one that the vultures of skepticism circled around. And it is, along with Jupiter, the planet that shows the most powerful statistical correlations, both in Gauquelin studies and in my own. Over the years, I've tested hundreds of keywords, isolating such character traits as pushy, obnoxious, stubborn, opinionated, and most tellingly, ego bastard. And according to those tests, roughly 15% of the population can be classified as ego bastards. And of that 15%, fully half have Gauquelin Mars. I'll get to the significance of that in a moment. For now, here's a list of some of the well-known Mars ego bastards: Donald Trump, Newt Gingrich, Muhammad Ali, Osama bin Laden, David Koresh, Don Imus, Oliver Stone, Jerry Falwell. And although we don't generally think of females as bastards, let alone ego bastards, some of them fit the profile. Let's call them ego monsters. And here's the list of those females with Gauquelin Mars: Hillary Clinton, Roseanne Barr, Yoko Ono, Madonna, Angelina Jolie, Linda Tripp, Madeline Murray O'Hare. And just to show that I'm not stacking the deck to prove a point, here's a list of ego bastards who don't have Gauquelin Mars: Hitler, Joseph McCarthy, Rush Limbaugh, Charles Manson, Ted Turner, Billy Martin, Bobby Knight, Woody Hayes, Howard Cosell, Charlie Finley, Pete Rose, Norman Mailer, Robert F. Kennedy Sr., and Rosie O'Donnell. But we're not concerned with the second list now. Today's topic is Gauquelin Mars. So let's zoom in on that. Gauquelin Mars occurs slightly more than 17% of the time. And if the results were purely random, we would expect 17% of the ego bastards to have Gauquelin Mars. But in fact, the number is 49%. That's right, nearly half of the ego bastards have an aspect that occurs only 17% of the time. What's more, fully 40% of Mars people can be classified as ego bastards, compared to only 15% of the population as a whole. The odds against such a result happening by chance are 10 million to 1. That's not a made-up number. The odds are literally 10 million to 1. But we've got a problem because the majority of Mars people are not ego bastards. Yeah, 40% of them are, but 60% are not. And it would be a distortion of reality to say that all Gauquelin Mars people are ego bastards. If we say that, we're going to be wrong 60% of the time. Thus, although a gigantic ego is something we need to watch out for, it's a byproduct of a larger phenomena. It must be. There has to be a larger, less toxic category that ego bastards is a subset of. But what is that larger category? The key to this lies in the professional studies. Here are the groups that the Gauquelins found statistically significant for Mars. High were athletes, businessmen, military leaders, and doctors. And low were artists. What do the high groups have in common? Leaving the doctors out for now, what do athletes, businessmen, and military leaders have in common? They're action-oriented and competitive, and they measure success by objective standards. Contrast to that to the art world, where the best is a matter of taste, opinion, and fashion. But in sports, the result is not a matter of opinion. Someone wins, someone loses, and it's on the scoreboard for everyone to see. And gradually, a pecking order is established. Last place, third place, second place, champion, hierarchy. Same thing in war. Winners, losers, victors, vanquished, hierarchy. Same thing in business. Winners, losers, millionaires, paupers, hierarchy. What can we conclude from this? That Mars people like to fight, that they like to win, that they're drawn to activities where there are clear winners and losers, and that they want to rise in the pecking order. And what's behind that drive? Ego. But let's be clear. It's not necessarily toxic ego. There is such a thing as healthy ego. It is connected to the desire to excel. But anytime you gather a group of highly ambitious people together, a certain percentage of them will go overboard. Those are your ego bastards. On dating sites, women are constantly saying, I want a man who is confident but not arrogant. And it leads sensitive men to roll their eyes at such self-delusion. But the women aren't completely wrong. There is a difference. Confidence is not arrogance. Not always, anyway. And that's what we're talking about here. People with a healthy ego are confident, and ego bastards are arrogant. And both occur far above chance among people with Gauquelin Mars. Putting the doctors back in, what is the greatest achievement for doctors? Saving lives. That's when they win. When a patient dies, they lose. Life is victory. Death is defeat. Health is victory. Illness is defeat. And the more victories you have, the higher you rise in the pecking order. But even the greatest doctors have patients who die, and even the greatest athletes lose sometimes. Nobody goes through life undefeated. And it's built into the Mars psychology that you can suffer defeat without losing confidence in yourself. Indeed, losing makes you try harder. But although Mars is ego-driven in a simple, I want to excel way, it's also ego-driven by another definition, Freud's definition. And Freud saw the ego as serving the function of realism. The id generates desire, and the ego funnels that desire into realistic action. And if you look at the Mars professions, doctor, businessman, military leader, they are realistic professions. They operate in what we think of as the real world. At a school where I once taught, one of my fellow teachers had a Gauquelin Mars, and one day while we were jabbering in the faculty lounge, he told me, "I'm not the best teacher in the department, but I'm no goof-off. I do an acceptable job. I'm a professional." That was a very Mars-like thing for him to say. First off, he thought in terms of hierarchy. He had ranked all the teachers, and he was realistic about where he stood. Not the best and not the worst, but good enough to be considered a professional. Hierarchy, realism, professionalism. All Mars traits. But you might say, how is that guy Mars-like? I thought Mars people fought to be the best. And they do, in their chosen arena. But this particular guy did not see himself as a teacher. His ego wasn't engaged in teaching. Teaching was merely a way of putting bread on the table. His real interest was architecture, and he was building a house entirely by himself. All the digging, all the carpentry, all the wiring, all the plumbing, he worked on it every day after school. He worked on it every weekend. He worked on it all summer. That's what he cared about. That's where his ego was invested. So you need to watch for that with Mars people, where their egos are invested, because the urge to excel is often very task-specific. True, they are proud people fixated upon winning, but the ego need not intrude himself into every corner of life. When no passion is stirred, Mars is content to be a professional. Look at this list of Mars women. Like Jordan Peterson, every single one of them has a will of iron. Every single one of them has a fire in the belly. Every single one of them was a fighter. But not one of them was an athlete, a doctor, a businesswoman, a military leader, or an ego bastard. They were crusaders. Madame Curie was a crusader for science. Maria Montessori for education. Mother Teresa for the helpless and the hopeless, and Helen Keller for the disabled. And Helen Keller wasn't just a crusader. She was one of the most ferocious people who ever lived, born deaf, dumb, and blind. She fought day after day, week after week, year after year to overcome her shortcomings. And in doing so, she became a great soul. That's Mars. Ego? Yes. Fighting? Yes. But in the best of cases, fighting with a goal, fighting with a purpose, fighting for a cause, identifying a dragon and slaying it. In my keyword studies, Mars people came out high in forceful, driven, dynamic, and parental. And neutral for everything else, and for the first trait, forceful, the odds against the result happening by chance were about 100 million to 1. All serves as a verification for Gauquelin's professional studies. One of the axes that Mars showed neutral for was the rebel team player axis. And being neutral, you'd think that this is something that you can safely ignore, but you can't. Because these aren't your normal neutral factors, where not much is happening. Oh no. A lot is happening, and the result is neutral only because both sides are equally strong and they are in a never-ending tug of war with each other. Let's jump to Mars symbolism to explain why. Here's a picture of the planets. These planets here, Mercury and Venus, are called the inferior planets because their orbits are inside the orbit of the Earth. These planets are called the superior planets because their orbits are outside the Earth's orbits. And these planets here, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, are the visible superior planets. And it just so happens that along with the Moon, they are the planets that the Gauquelins found statistically significant. But unlike the Moon, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn are timeline planets. And when any one of them is in a Gauquelin plus zone, the person nearly always has strong leanings in a professional direction. There's an urge to be a doctor, a lawyer, a businessman, a shop foreman, someone important, someone productive, someone respected. Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn are resume-building planets, by which I mean when a person is asked, "Who are you?" they immediately reply, "I'm an accountant," or "I'm a lawyer," or "I am a scientist." These are planets of doing. And people under their influence define themselves by their deeds. And if they get to a certain age and don't have any deeds to show, their self-esteem goes straight down the toilet. The Moon, by contrast, is off the timeline, and Moon people do not define themselves by their deeds, but by their feelings. All three timeline planets are connected to accomplishing worldly goals. They're all connected to professionalism. Mars is the aggressive professional. Jupiter is the extroverted professional, and Saturn is the introverted professional. But all are professional, all are on the timeline, all are resume builders. But now look at this picture. It's Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn to scale. Look how puny Mars is. It's hard to even see it, so I'll circle it. It's still hard to see. In this sense of being too small is embedded in the Mars psychology. In high school, we had a guy on the football team. He was a tiny guy, 5'5" and 130 pounds. And he was neither fast nor strong. But he played linebacker on the varsity team, and in one game he made 17 tackles. If a linebacker made 10, it was enough to earn him a water buffalo on his helmet. But this tiny, unathletic guy made 17 because he was completely fearless. He hustled on every play. He threw himself at the ball carrier. Blood would be running down his face. His nickname was Joe Guts. That's Mars, the feisty little guy, the underdog, the victim of discrimination who must try extra hard, the guy with a chip on his shoulder. But it's paradoxical because Mars can be so confident that it reaches arrogance. Mars is the champion, Mars is the hero, Mars is the winner, and the rest of you are losers. Look at Donald Trump, always complaining about foreigners, fake news, and the traitors Democrats. He's the victim, get it? He's the underdog. But he's also always bragging about how rich he is, what a great deal maker he is, how he set this or that record, how only he can solve this or that problem, and how everyone else is a loser. And whether or not any of this is objectively true, he needs to talk this way because that's how he psychs himself up for a fight. And Hillary Clinton uses similar strategy, painting herself as a victim with her complaints about the glass ceiling and the vast right-wing conspiracy, but then turning around and bragging how she's the most qualified candidate who ever ran for president. And it makes no difference whether what she says is true or not, because her purpose isn't to state the truth. Her purpose is to psych herself up for a fight. Get it? Mars is all about the fight. And painting yourself as both a victim and a conquering hero are ways of psyching yourself up for that fight. Let me be clear, I'm not saying these things to criticize Trump or Hillary. I'm saying them so that you understand how Mars thinks. But it isn't really thinking. It's more primal than that. It's emotional. It's instinctual. It's pre-conscious. It's built into the psychology, and it isn't bad. Nothing in astrology is good or bad. It's nature. It's how the human psyche was designed. Mars people are feisty because that's how the Creator wants it to be. Okay, Mars has two energies. As a puny little nobody, it's continually trying to prove himself. But as a professional planet, it's on equal footing with Jupiter and Saturn. And maybe it's even better because it's faster, more solid, and closer to the Earth. What is crucial is that Mars uses both to give itself a competitive edge. Mars isn't just a fighter, it's a strategic thinker, and it's always cooking up ways to win. But Mars also wants freedom. Yes, it wants worldly success, and it will discipline itself in order to achieve that success. But the wild horse can't always be bridled. And this conformity-freedom dilemma is connected to the order-chaos struggle that Jordan Peterson talks about. What I found, however, is that the contrast between order and chaos is an incomplete one. Why? Because it underrates the importance of freedom. You can look at the situation like this. There is the main road, where to avoid chaos, you choose order. But you need to watch out because too much order can lead to stagnation. Then there is the road less traveled, where to avoid stagnation, you choose freedom. But you're taking a big risk because too much freedom can lead to chaos. Got it? Two paths, not one, each with its characteristic risks and rewards. The majority of Mars people choose the main road. And from a practical standpoint, it's a smart choice because that's where the money and status are. And the security. This is symbolized in skyTotems by the house on the hill. But a smaller number take the road less traveled. It's riskier and more chaotic, and failure is more likely. But the rewards are bigger because when you succeed, if you succeed, the success is more striking and you are hailed as the Dragon Slayer. What advice would I give to a Mars person? In truth, there are two sets of advice. If you take the main road with the goal of occupying the house on the hill, then my advice is to work hard, follow the rules, do your duty, live up to your responsibilities, slowly rise in the pecking order, but be alert, and when your chance comes, seize it. But if you take the road less traveled with the hope of becoming a Dragon Slayer, my advice is to find the one thing that you are passionate about. The thing you would do if money and status were no object, and then, by God, do it. That's it for now. This is Patrick Jerome saying, see you next time.